I made this project for a world history class that I was enrolled in for my college. My teacher let us choose a topic that we felt strong about and gave us free rein to create a presentation for it. After finishing the rough draft of my project, a week before we were supposed to present it, my teacher basically told me that it was too much. Keep in mind, she viewed my presentation topic and approved it before this, her only note being that I should issue a disclaimer, which I didn't understand because this is knowledge that everyone should have. She argued that I couldn't possibly grasp the reality of how women in India feel about this subject because it's deeply rooted in their religious and political views, which vary greatly from ours in the US. She didn't want me to offend anyone, and she also told me that many of my images were too inappropriate for a school setting, even though all of us are adults. I tried to reassure her that I did my research. For 2 weeks, I spent 4 to 8 hours a day on research, and I made sure to include information from Indian women and Indian news articles so that I understood their point of view. I also tried to explain to her that menstruation is a natural part of human life, and that if her worry was about offending the men in my class, honestly, who cares? Women are forced to deal with this every month, every year, for most of their lives. We don't have a choice. So why are men automatically exempt from learning about this? See, that's part of the problem. Menstruation is viewed as such a taboo subject that when it is talked about, people feel uncomfortable. Also, it's not taught to everyone in society, just the women, and this depends on the country and state you live in. But it should be taught to everyone. Men are the ones calling it gross and dirty. Men are the ones making unfair assumptions that a woman cannot think right or work well or reason when she has her period. All the fucked up stereotypes about women come from men, and they come from those men due to lack of education and lack of discussion. Menstruation is taught to females in the US in elementary school during like a quick 30-minute class so that we don't completely freak out when we first notice blood gushing out of our vaginas. Most of the time, the videos we're shown and the advice we're given is rushed and outdated. Young women don't even ask questions when they're given the chance during this one-time lecture because honestly, we're scared. Because again, it's not talked about. And adding to that, women are taught to keep quiet about it. We're made to think from a young age that having a period is shameful. Anyways, back to my project. While my images of bloody tampons and paintings made with blood were too much for my class, other students were doing presentations on slavery, genocide, hangings. This led me to feel angry, so angry because we live in a world in which viewing images of bloody mass graves is accepted, but viewing images of bloody pads is not. How is my natural bodily function more offensive than people being enslaved, abused, and murdered? After a long back and forth with my teacher, I was not allowed to present my project to the class. Whatever I was saying was not getting through to her. I got a free pass on this assignment, which I assume most people would be happy with, a free A. But I wasn't happy. I wanted my class to hear my voice. I wanted to spread awareness to young people that this shit happening in India is not cool. I worked my ass off to find all the information and images for this project. And here I was, ready to present, ready to watch people's reactions, ready to make it known that women are fed up and that men need to listen to us. And yet here I was, getting a free pass in order to keep me silent, in order to protect the men in my class from the vile, unthinkable human function of menstruation. I had to sit there and listen to my classmates give their presentations, biting my tongue, screaming inside about how unfair this was. Part of what makes me so upset is that I had this amazing project prepared, and I felt it was perfect, but then I had to chip away at it in order for it to be deemed as appropriate. First, it was too long of a presentation, so I had to shorten it. Then I needed to issue a disclaimer. Then I had to change a few of my images, which turned into changing almost all of my images, and then I had to change my wording, again, and again, and again. I chipped away so much good, important information, and in the end, it was canceled anyways. I was so frustrated that I didn't even want to revisit this project. It took me months just to open this back up and look at it. I probably should have cleaned this up a little better before making this video, but honestly, I'm just so tired. I don't even know if this will be allowed on Instagram or YouTube. It might get flagged. Women are objectified constantly in society, but our opinions about women's issues are always censored. It's exhausting. Ultimately, though, I wanted my voice to be heard. That was the goal. I wanted the voices of these strong Indian women to be heard. And what better way to share a voice than doing so on social media? So, this is my project about menstruation. A project that was banned from being given at my college because it was too offensive. And actually, before I start, I want to just state this presentation doesn't even begin to cover all the issues that women face because of menstruation. It's simplified for time. Also, keep in mind, this is a broad view of India and a broad view of the US because obviously different states and different people don't all feel the exact same way as others. I am an American woman. However, I tried my best to capture the realities that women in India face, and I feel I did a good job with this. Menstruation is integral for human life. I feel we need to start with some background information so that you can get an idea of why I will keep saying that menstruation is essential. So here's a simplified explanation of menstruation. The female body prepares for pregnancy every month, and if the woman is not pregnant, menstruation occurs as a way to release the egg that it no longer needs. Women develop their period around the age of 12, and they go through menopause, which is the end of their period, around the age of 55. At this time, they can no longer naturally get pregnant because they will not produce any more eggs. For this reason, periods are a fundamental part of human life, because without them, the female body couldn't get pregnant. Humanity literally depends on the woman of the world. Alright, so let's take a look at how menstruation is treated in the US. And side note, this is one of the pictures that was banned. A glittery tampon! In the US, women honor their periods in many different ways. Some parents throw period parties for their daughters on their first period as a way to empower them and welcome them into womanhood. They have red decorations, red foods, congratulative cakes, and they receive gifts like tampons. Even comedian and party legend Bert Kreischer did this for his daughter and claims it was one of the most fun parties he's ever been to. These parties may seem odd, but they're actually a really great way to spread acceptance and knowledge, which is especially important for young people. Art and social media are a great way for women to share their period experiences. If you search menstruation on Instagram, 456,000 tags come up and 4.3 thousand tags come up for menstruation art. Menstruation art encompasses a wide variety of art. Things like funny memes, comics, beautiful drawings, paintings, or pictures of the female body. Some artists use canvases like sanitary pads, and some art is even painted with period blood. Social media is a great platform to share these things. This is kind of like a new, expressive, and unique way to empower women, and it helps make periods less taboo and more accepted because it gives them recognition. A very important part of eliminating the negative stigma behind periods is making it mainstream. Women in the US have many different types of easily found menstruation products. Some of the most common are pads and tampons, but there's many others too. Things like heating pads, patches, and PMS pills help reduce painful menstruation symptoms. Most of these things are easy to find at any grocery store. The point I'm trying to make is that American women have options. But just because American women have these options does not mean it's always easy. Not being able to afford necessary sanitary products is known as period poverty, and it's common. Nearly 20% of American girls miss school due to this. In her lifetime, the average woman spends around $6,000 on period products like pads and tampons. But add in sanitary wipes, PMS pills, etc., and that price goes up. That's a lot of money, especially since 1 in 7 Americans are living below the poverty line. Not to mention the tampon tax, which varies in each state, and I'm happy to say that 20 US states have eliminated it. But for those that haven't, basically, women are charged a tax on period products because those products are viewed as luxuries, not necessities. But I'll let you decide. Compare tampons to yachts. Isn't it clear which one's a luxury and which one's a necessity? Okay, so Now that we've seen some ways that menstruation is treated in America, let's talk about what it looks like in India. And again, this is a generalization. I myself am not Indian and I do not live in India, nor have I ever even visited India. But I have done my best to research what it is like for the women who are living there. Women in India are taught that the period is shameful. They're told that it's impure, and because of this, they are greatly mistreated. There's a lot of fear and humiliation behind menstruation in India. While some parents in America are throwing period parties for their daughters, in India, around 71% of young girls are completely unaware of what menstruation is until the day they get it because it's so shameful to talk about in their community. Imagine how terrifying that would be for those girls. I probably would have thought that I was dying. Period poverty in India. Only 36% of women in India use sanitary pads, while the remaining 64% do not have access. This can lead to many health problems. Without proper menstrual hygiene, women gain higher chances of contracting cervical cancer, hepatitis B, and reproductive yeast and urinary infections. So, what do the 64% use in place of sanitary pads? Things like old rags, leaves, newspapers, napkins, socks, mud, basically anything that will stop the bleeding. And as you can imagine, some of those products are very uncomfortable and very unsafe. Aside from not having access, women have to pay a big price for period products. You can see on this picture in the right corner that meal, it costs 10 rupees, while the box of pads costs triple. That's insane! Religion and menstruation. This is where it starts to get crazy. Women in India are banned from reading holy books and attending Muslim temples during menstruation because it's thought to be a sign of impurity. Forgive me if I pronounce some things wrong. The Sabarimala temple in Kerala has had a lot of controversy because it's one of India's holiest shrines. Women in India have been protesting for their right to enter the sacred space, and as a result, they've been fired with tear gas and sprayed with water cannons. In 2019, 5 million women formed a human chain that reached 385 miles long to peacefully protest. Yeah, 5 million women. Riot police were present, but luckily didn't harm anyone at that time. Some extreme Muslim groups have even threatened to commit suicide to prevent women from entering the temples. And all I have to say to that is, alright, bet. Okay, here are some myths that are still believed in some parts of India. Menstruating women should not enter the kitchen or cook because their period makes them so unclean that touching the food might poison it. If a menstruating woman touches someone else, she could transfer her sickness to them. Some villages in India even make women sleep in a fucking hut outside while menstruating, and since they can't cook or use kitchens, they have to rely 100% on friends or family to bring them food. During rainy season, sometimes the huts will flood, and the women have to remain there until their period ends. In 2018, a 14-year-old actually died because of this. While these restrictions and accusations have no scientific logic behind them and are not present in all of India, they're still widely believed. And it's no wonder why women are getting fed up. School and menstruation. If you recall from the last American slide, around 20% of American girls miss school due to their period. And that seems like kind of a large number, right? Well, in India, young girls are not even allowed to attend school while they're on their period. 23% of girls in India drop out of school altogether after they get their first period. This is due to things like stigma, lack of sanitary products, and being forced to stay home. This does not only affect grade school students, though. In 2020, at a college in Gujarat, female students are expected to log their names into a register to alert authority of their menstruation. For 2 months, no student did so, and who could blame them? But because of this, female students were told to strip down in front of their teachers so they could check if anyone was menstruating. This is a massive violation of human rights, and it sparked a protest on campus demanding that the officials be held accountable. The vice chancellor of the college avoided apology and responded to the outlash by saying, well, they broke the rules. This was not the only incident either. 3 years before this, at a school in northern India, 70 students were forced to strip naked after a teacher found blood in the bathroom. Even though there's still many more issues that I could talk about, I feel I've covered the main things. And because this is already a 15-minute video, I'll wrap it up. What are women doing to combat the stigma? I don't want to just hit you guys with a bunch of sad stories and statistics, even though that is reality for these women. I want to end this on a positive note. So here are some things that women in India are doing to combat this outdated view on menstruation. The All India Democratic Women's Association is an Indian organization consisting of around 9 million women, and they're described as being committed to achieving democracy, equality, and women's emancipation. Having a support system of empowering women like this is a big step forward. The Happy to Bleed movement, where women post a picture on social media of them holding a sign saying #HappyToBleed, and the Red Dot Challenge, where women post a black and white picture of themselves with a red dot in their hand, are both ways that women have been spreading period awareness and support on social media. As I mentioned before, women in India are protesting, and they are doing an amazing job by getting millions of women to join in. Women are making it known that we will no longer be silenced. There's also new companies forming, like one called Sati Pads, that are reimagining women's hygiene products, making biodegradable pads that are easier to access by subsidizing costs in poor rural areas and upcharging in urban areas. Even though India has ridiculous prices on their period products, a big step forward is that back in 2017, India banned the tampon tax. So in that regard, but really only that regard, India is actually more accepting than some states in the US. These are just a few of the ways that women in India are taking their part to have their voices heard in order to one day eliminate period poverty and menstruation fear. We have a long way to go though, so please share this video, spread the word, and get people talking.